Another issue that you have raised is reducing harm due to medicines in line with the WHO objectives. Can you tell us what this is about?
It's a few years ago now. There was a position where WHO said one of the things they want to see was reduced harm by medicines and improved patient safety. And it was quite a strong trigger for the then Secretary of State, Andrew Lansley, that he put that in place as being one of the requirements of wanting to achieve. However, the way it's done is still based on the same model, which says, well, it's down to the prescriber to make the decision. It's not down to anybody else. And actually what you then do is you're not enabling me as a pharmacist to be at the most effective I am. Or if I am effective, what I then have to do is go, well, I don't think this is necessarily the most appropriate thing. I'm going to have to send you back to the prescriber to provide you with something safer. And we know that approximately 8% of all hospital admissions are medicines related. So again, if you're able to improve the level of care that you provide and the way that you optimize the use of the medicines, you are likely to reduce the number of patients that are admitted to hospital under those circumstances. Guess what? That helps to create some capacity within the system, which then enables those hospitals to have some spaces effectively to provide more care for other people, because you've taken away one of the easier things in a way that we can do more effectively and provide better care.
Very logical. Now, thinking about improving patient pathways, you've hinted that the government tends to approach this by asking the same people all the time and therefore coming up with the same old answers. How could this be improved?
One of the things you tend to find, and it's not just government, this tends to occur across the whole system, is when patient pathways are being designed, you get a group of people together, generally medics, clinicians, people who are considered clinicians in that sense, who will then sit down and go, right, I've got a diabetic, so what's the best way for me to provide care for that diabetic wherever they are? So what they will do is they'll look at the pathway and they'll think about when they need to be in the hospital, when they should be seen in general practice, when they might need to be seen by the nurse, what the diabetic nurse can do, what other people can do, including maybe sometimes pharmacists. But then they go, oh, I suppose we need to think about how the medicines are going to work in this. And then they drop the medicines into the pathway rather than starting with the whole thing as part of the pathway. So what you tend to find is the same problem, that as a result, the medicines come as an afterthought rather than as a fundamental part of what you're doing. There has been some changes around that, which has improved what we're trying to do. However, what you tend to find is that pharmacists and pharmacy tend to be seen again still as a bit of an afterthought with any of these decision making. And you saw that with some of the discussions about what happened at the recovery event that was run by the Prime Minister, where it appeared there weren't pharmacists there, or there were very few, or those that were of any significant influence. And the consequence is that sometimes what you're not then able to do is for that to be seen within the pathway. And it's not deliberate in a sense of the people that are there ignore it, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you haven't got a voice there that's raising it, you don't hear it, and therefore it becomes a gap.
Now, can you give us an example?
If you want a really obvious example of this, I go back to what I said at the beginning, that one of my pharmacies is a major vaccination site. When their planning historically has been done for pandemics or for any type of major event like that, they never included pharmacy. Pharmacy was never seen as part of the solution. And yet, without pharmacy in its broadest context, the entire vaccination program would have fallen over. Because whether you were a hospital pharmacist that had to deal with the very strong mechanisms to maintain temperature control, whether you were part of pharmacists in logistics, in being able to move the product and being able to understand when you could move it, how you could move it, what you could do with it. Then you had the whole issue about who was providing it, who was delivering it. Well, actually, if you didn't have the pharmacists on site, they didn't know how to make it up even. in some of the central sites that they used. So again, a pharmacist was essential from that point of view. And actually, community pharmacies being part of the provision was a bit of an afterthought. We weren't included at the very beginning. We were included quite quickly because there was a realization there wasn't enough capacity, but it was still an afterthought. And yet now, the majority of vaccine provision for COVID is now provided through community pharmacy. That is the biggest site, particularly in London, compared to any other provider. So you can see how it's become more important. And again, you've seen this with flu vaccines. Historically, pharmacists weren't involved in the delivery of flu vaccines, and they have been over the course of the last few years. And as you can see, the numbers that are being delivered through pharmacy continues to increase year on year. And even this year, we've seen a significant increase in pharmacy provision, whereas in other sites, I've heard a lot of GPs say, oh, I've got quite a lot of vaccine left. I don't seem to have seen the number of patients I've seen historically. Because that's where patient choice becomes a really important part of the jigsaw. So it's really important you include all of the players who are involved as part of what you're trying to do. And actually, you need to involve the people on the ground who are doing some of this, because actually, innovation comes from the ground up. It doesn't tend to come from people who do the buying. They tend to be, you buy what you buy, but what you offer is what you then want to buy.